Okay, we will go ahead and get started here. Thank you to everyone that's joining us. My name is Jamie Staten, and I'm the Family Engagement Specialist here at Trecca. We are recording this session just to make you aware of that. And for those that were not able to join us, we will be sharing this recording with them tomorrow as well. Today, we're going to be talking about how to stay connected and be involved to support student success. And it will be myself kind of taking us through these topics, as well as the instructional coaches will be helping me as well. You will want to keep your microphones muted if you're not speaking. We will have time for questions and answers throughout the session where you can unmute yourself then, or you can put your question in the chat box, whichever you're more comfortable with. So what we're going to talk about today is how to stay connected and be involved to support student success and what that looks like in an online environment. We're going to go over quickly the Adult Learning Partner Guide, how to help families support learning at home. We're going to talk about virtual tutoring, and then we're going to talk about our action team for partnerships. So how to stay connected and be involved to support student success. So ways that families and parents can stay connected with us, we have Navi's News. This is a newsletter that we send out monthly. It goes to students and parents' emails. You should be getting those usually at the beginning of each month. We highlight different field trips that we're offering, virtual programs. It offers like parent sessions, kind of like what we're doing now, and other topics, as well as it has helpful resources. We also send out the newsletter. We mail that out in the fall and the spring. The fall one was just put together, and you should be receiving that here within the next couple of weeks. There's also multiple ways that you can reach out to your teacher, advisors, counselors. You can do that through phones, email, text. You can request a Google Meet with them. And then we send out surveys periodically throughout the year as well, where we're always asking for family members' feedback and input. We send out progress reports in January. You do have the option to request a conference with your child's teacher, and you can actually do that at any time, not just when the progress reports come out. We have the navigation station sessions where we usually will have those a couple of different times a month at different times of the day, where we have different informational sessions for topics that parents bring up that they want to learn more about in the surveys, as well as popular topics that parents request from us as well. And then we post regular updates in Brightspace that will have pertinent school information for students, and then different events or programs coming up. And then people can follow us on social media, on Facebook or Instagram as well, to get additional information that way. So supporting my student at Trecca, the keys to being a good learning partner. So we have a learning partner guide that we've put out that highlights at different grade levels how family members can support their students. And this just has regular tasks that students may need help with. And have discovered that students will need more assistance at the beginning of the school year until they become more comfortable with their new school environment. This guide is found online. I'm going to share this with you briefly. But as you can see, it is split up by grades K through 1, grades 2 through 3, 4 to 5. And it just says making sure that the students are logging in 5 hours and 10 minutes per day, making sure they're checking and responding to their emails, making sure they're getting to all their live sessions on time. And if you have a younger student, you'll be a lot more hands-on with this than if you have like an older junior high or high school students. They'll be pretty able to do this on their own a lot, but you will want to check in with them just to make sure they're completing their tasks and getting their participation hours in. But we do have that shared on our website, and you can get that anytime, and we can send that to you as well. But how can students get organized for online learning success? And this highlights how students can set up their learning space, designate a quiet space with a desk, table, or work area, someplace quiet where they can complete their daily learning tasks. You want to make sure that they're keeping their computers charged so they don't lose charges during the day, keep their school supplies close to them within reach, and then also helping them create a daily work schedule and a routine. Here is some pictures of some sample student workstations. These are just examples. Your students' workstation can look however they're comfortable, but we just wanted to share some pictures that family members have shared with us with how their students have their station set up. So just a couple more examples for you. And then there's a couple of more. There's no wrong or right way. It's just whatever environment you feel your student is the most productive in. So our next slide, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Wazinski about creating a daily routine.
Hi, everyone. My name is John Wazinski. I'm one of the instructional coaches here at Trekka. And that means my role entails working with our teachers to support teachers in improving their instruction, their bright space environment, which all makes an impact on student learning. So I want to talk with you first about creating a daily routine. Our best advice is to plan for a 5-day work week with 5 hours and 10 minutes per day, and to work in the order that makes the most sense to you. We can't really provide blanket guidance to everyone because the day of a high school student is going to be so much different than the day of a first or second grader. But some things that we believe are always helpful are to incorporate breaks. Brain breaks are very related to learning and to retention and to being able to take in new material successfully, including eating well during your day, including lunch. Once you decide on a routine that works best for your student and your family, post your schedule. You can also use your Google Calendar to create a schedule just for you. It wouldn't be visible to others, but you can use the tool to set up blocks of time that help you organize your work. So why stay organized? Why invest time and planning into that? It helps you stay motivated. One less decision to make. They say decision overload is always a problem. That it takes away from our productivity. So managing your time well and staying motivated is one of the benefits. It helps you stay on pace with your coursework as well as your required number of hours, and it helps you grow as a learner to reach success. Contacting your teachers. You're always welcome to reach out to your teachers, and also if you have an advisor or counselor, especially on the high school side, always welcome to stay in touch by the way that is most convenient for you, whether that's email, text, or phone. You'd say don't hesitate to reach out even if it is after hours, because that staff member will receive your message the next time they log in following morning, and will be able to get back to you promptly so that you're not waiting too long. We also want to share a little bit about helping families support learning at home. One way is always using positive language when talking with your student about school. Growth mindset is focused on positive thoughts and words. It's encouraging. So, not all of us have had a positive experience in school or at every one of our grade levels. But we kind of have to set that aside a little bit and really pay attention to the messages that we're sending to our students. So, for instance, I'll start with the red. There are smarter kids and kids who are not as smart, and that's a belief that is not true. That the growth mindset statement would be effort makes you smarter. Effort does pay off. I don't know this, and I never will. I don't know if you can guess the subject that we hear that statement the most from adults as well as from children. It's This is Bull's subject area, math. And it's a really common belief. But the the positive mindset statement to really start to change that mindset is, I don't know this yet, but my effort will pay off. The work I put in will pay off. And other folks have that about writing or about research or about art or about sports. There's lots of examples out there. A fixed mindset statement would be give up. Just cheat, just look up that answer online. It's faster. But there's less learning that happens, through those statements. A better statement would be ask questions, try a different way. Have you thought of trying this? Spur your student to seek out learning through the right avenues. And one last one is, that you are growing your brain as you practice different techniques in learning, that you're training yourself to learn, and that pays off in better understanding and better grades. We also offer something that I think is really unique, and it really benefits everyone who has a schedule that's not a daily, 9 to 5 schedule or 7 to 3 schedule. And we have a lot of students who do a lot of their work in the late afternoons and in the evenings and into the nighttime, when we talk about high schoolers and students who are with us to earn credits for graduation. So we do have virtual tutoring, which is 24-hour, 7-day-a-week service through a virtual tutoring provider, and they're known as Brainfuse. So the only caution we have is you don't want to go to their site independently. You want to go into the site using our Brightspace link in the course where you'd like the help. In Brightspace, in your classes, you will see, it's usually called, in the modules on the left side of your class, you'll see a module named Free Homework Help or Tutoring. It's possibly could also be named something like Brainfuse Tutoring. And you can use that link to then request help in any of your Treka classes. You will go through a form. You'll use a form to fill out what subject you need help with, share maybe what assignment you're working on or what topic. There's also a writing lab where you can get feedback on a paper to improve your writing before you submit it. Another neat feature is you can take some practice tests. You can study, do some extra studying in the topic using flashcards. And these tools are available to all our students on the Brainfuse site. So now I'd like to introduce my colleague in instructional coaching, Mrs. Amy Bull.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here this evening. I'm going to kind of jump off from a lot of what John was just talking about in order to help your students at home with reading and math. The first couple of things that we're going to see are specific to reading, and then we have some tips that will apply to both subjects. So I'll talk a little bit about how you can be a really good partner for your student at home. These are research-based ways that we can help children develop the skills that they need to read with comprehension in mind and retention in mind, so they remember what they read and they understand what they read. And one of the best ways, and if you have, I'm sure you don't, but let's say in my home, I have some maybe negative personality attributes, like stubbornness, that I would just love to not pass down to my children. And yet, I am such a great role model for them that it seems that they do take after me anyway. And so similar to that, our kids see what we do and they model it. And one of those wonderful ways when it comes to reading is just to be a reader yourself, to model yourself reading, to model yourself, talking about reading, whether it's for business or pleasure, whether it's something you picked up because you wanted to, or maybe you have to read something for work. Consider exposing that process to your child. And then, of course, reading to them or with them. And that really doesn't stop at the preschool age. You can read to your kids. Everybody loves being read to. So even if your kids are in high school, I think it's a wonderful thing to spend time doing. It gives you lots of conversation starters, and it also expands all kinds of knowledge, including your vocabulary knowledge and knowledge of perspectives. So it's wonderful to just do that together. And in the same vein, providing a lot of different types of things. So reading for just enjoyment, whether it's the graphic novel that they've read for the gazillionth time that maybe doesn't feel like they're reading War and Peace. They're still reading and enjoying having that book, and that muscle memory is important. But also we can read to learn something. We can read to get information about things that we want to know more about. Hobbies, sports, interests are on the slide, but just about anything that you want to know more about, you can find in a book. And then it's also a space to enjoy. We can encourage our kids to do things that require reading. So, putting together something, using a manual, constructing. This slide gives the example of a kite, which is a really great example of something that they want to do and they want to enjoy. Well, in order to put it together properly, you have to be able to read and understand the instructions, even if those are pictorial instructions. Sometimes we're not just reading words. We have all kinds of other ways of gaining information. If you know that your child has an interest in something, reading to gain more information about that, and then providing those opportunities for them. And then the other one that I like to do is establish a daily reading time, and that doesn't have to feel like a chore. It can be, at the end of the day during like a nighttime routine, or right before dinner. Or I've known some families that read at dinner, whether it's together, they read something together. I think that's really a really nice thing if you can swing it to get some time to read all together out loud, or just everybody get a book that they're interested in, and then you can have some parallel reading time. I think those are all ways to inject reading as part of your family culture. And then you can also write to encourage reading, which is really nice. So written notes to your child, little postcard size things, that they can find in their drawer or at their desk, to encourage them. Anytime that they're away, tucking something into their coat pocket, just to encourage. I've seen families also do like notebooks back and forth, because sometimes children have things that they want to talk about, and it's hard to broach those topics in conversation, so they can use a back and forth notebook. Certainly making the library part of your family routine is a really wonderful thing to do, especially if you can swing that weekly. It's really wonderful. Students can see, children can see your children. I'm used to saying students because I'm a teacher. They can be exposed to all kinds of things and just browse. Just the joy of looking at the children's book section can inspire them to pick something up. And then, read together, read independently, or with another family member. All of that is good. This third one is really interesting to me, having like a vacation mode in your house, where as much as possible, all the devices are off and we're just reading today, or this weekend, or this 2 hours, or whatever you can swing. I think that's really great to prioritize that, and not in like oh no, here comes my time when I have to put my phone away. It can actually be like a joyous break, especially for students who spend their learning time at school on a computer, on a screen. Letting their just eyes and body have a break from that is really like feels like a vacation. And then, always using, I think John said this, use always positive language about reading, and encourage them. And, whenever they can sit down and read a book, encourage that, and let them know that you notice that that's a good habit that they're building. And then also, of course, anytime that children spend reading offline, they can submit that to the Evolve portal, and then they can receive learning time for that. And so that's sort of class-based, but it can, you can certainly get attendance for doing that. There we go. Then these are some tips that they go across both reading and math. So I'll just talk about them now, and then when we get to the next slide, I think there's one that I added. So in order to support the classwork that your your student's teacher is giving to you, there are ways that you can be a really supportive partner, and a lot of this is probably things that you're already doing. But even though we're an online school, we always encourage the analog writing of whether it's taking notes or writing down something that they learned and want to remember. Screenshots are great. The technology that we have is amazing to get the information that we want to have. But keeping a handwritten analog version of that at their desk or with them is really a wonderful way to get them in that practice. And then they also get to use their skills of then reading what they've written. The vocabulary notebook suggested here is really a wonderful way to keep track of new words. There's new words thrown at the students in kindergarten through 12th grade every day. So keeping track of that and having like a reference to refer is really, really helpful in both of those subjects, sample problems in math, academic vocabulary in both. And then taking an interest in what they're doing. Can you show me what you worked on today? What kinds of things are you doing out of an interest in kind of what they're learning? Is a wonderful way to really partner and show that like this isn't, you're not checking up on them necessarily to make sure that they're doing what they say, although that's a nice added benefit. But starting that conversation about what is exciting to you in your social studies class, or what kinds of things are you reading that really connect with you. Ask them to show you. I guarantee that they'll show you something that they are proud of. Communicating with your teachers or your children's teachers, obviously, that's a great way to find out just kind of how things are going, and if your student needs extra support or a challenge, any of those things. Your child's teacher is a wonderful, wonderful research. And then the virtual tutoring that John was talking about, jumping on with that is a really unique thing that we have available to students who don't work on the traditional school day hours. I'm going to continue talking about math, and I'm going to try to keep it brief because math was what I taught when I was in the classroom, and I'm very passionate about the learning of math. I find it really challenging to teach it. And the one thing that I really love to share with anybody, and this applies to my teacher colleagues as well, is to speak positively about math, even if that wasn't your lived experience when you were in school yourself. A lot of us go through school, especially if if we were in school before like the mid 90s, we might have experiences with math being sort of very rigid, and if you didn't know it, you couldn't learn anything else because you were stuck in this spot, and kind of internalized a lot of negative feelings about yourself or your intelligence based on that experience. And that is ubiquitous across everybody. Every group will have somebody in it who will say something like, oh, I just can't do math, don't bring me that. Whether it's parents or fellow teachers, and that's their real lived experience, and you might identify with that too. And I just, as a math teacher, I would love it if we could speak a little bit more positively about that struggle, because I think our children hear that and they think, well, my mom or my dad or my grandma or my aunt, they struggled and they're brilliant. And so I think they do everything right. And if they struggled, well, I definitely can't do it. And so they shut down before they even get to the stuff. And so as much as possible, certainly you don't have to tell a story that isn't true, but as much as possible, talk about math being a productive struggle, and encourage your student to work through what they can and ask for help when they need it. The notebook is also really useful here, like I talked about before, working through problems. Even if it takes longer, a math problem doesn't have to be solved in 30 seconds or you're never going to get it. And a lot of times there's lots of different ways to think about it and perform whatever operation is being asked. And so thinking really broadly about what you see is encouraged. And so if you have some notes that you can use as resources, it's really helpful. And solving problems with pencil and paper is a lot of times very much easier than trying to type it out. So take an interest, again, ask your child to show you what they're working on, ask for help with the tutor and the teacher if there is something that they're struggling with at home. And I totally get it. I have a fifth grader at my house, and I'm a math teacher who's licensed to teach fifth grade. And sometimes I have to think really deeply about what is being asked and how we can go about it. So I know that it is not an easy ask, but just want to kind of put in a plug for that positive talk because it makes a difference. There's a couple of really great resources that you can use at home for technology as far as working those problems out that we encourage. We design our math classes in mind, thinking that students will use outside resources to help. We use Khan Academy all the time in classes, and then there are also a bazillion videos that are available for students if they find that they just, maybe they need a refresher and they want to go search themselves how to find, if they forget how to do one-step equations and they're in geometry. And the geometry class probably doesn't have something like that in that class because that was learned in algebra or pre-algebra a couple of years or a year before. So students can go refresh their memory there. Math Antics is a really similar a situation. It's smaller, doesn't have as many videos, and it's geared toward younger students, but it's fun. It's got, music and sound effects, and kids enjoy it. And there's lots of other resources out there, channels out there that will have things like that. Virtual Nerd is upper level, and it's example problems. So you can find problems that are similar to the type of stuff that your student is working through. And then Math is Fun is practice stuff. They do have lessons. They do have lesson work in there. They have a lot of games that feel like you're just playing games, but they work some of that math knowledge in there. Some are better than others. Some are like solve this very simple addition problem and then play a game for a couple minutes and then come back. And then others really work the math into the game itself, which is fantastic. But there's some really good resources. This is definitely not an exhaustive list. And then any of this done can be submitted for Evolve portal time as well. A couple more resources that I haven't vetted these personally, but these came from, people who have, and there's lots of YouTube channels. I really can't stress that enough, that it's a great resource, especially since COVID, when a lot of brick and mortar schools went virtual. They started creating their own channels to try and get their lessons delivered, and that's still available. Mashup Math is actually one that I am familiar with. Moo Math has math and science. There's math and learning videos for kids. That's for younger students. Professor Dave Explains, I know that one too, is for high school. Very easy to understand. Let's get down to what's really important. And then Nancy Pie is for high school as well. The other thing that's great is that the state of Ohio offers practice tests, including the testing calculators that are available for students based on the tests that they're going to take. So if your student is taking, the third grade math test, that's their first experience coming in and taking those standardized tests. And a third grader, an 8 and 9-year-old might not know that they can use a calculator on certain parts of that test, and it's available to them if that's the case. Same thing in the upper grades. They might not know that they have a Desmos graphing calculator available to them. I use third grade as an example. There's actually not a calculator for that test, but experience with the testing site as a third grader is really a wonderful resource that they provide, so that when that student gets to the testing site, they don't panic and think like, I don't know, what button am I supposed to click? And then the calculators come later that are available in the test. A couple of other, I know Math Playground has a lot of games as well. Math is Fun and Math Playground are close. Math Playground also has some manipulatives. They can play around with some base 10 blocks, and that's really fun for the kids. They like, kind of making it a puzzle type of thing. There's board games as well. I just played Quirkle for the first time a couple of months ago. I had never played it before, which feels bananas to me. But that actually does build a linear thinking of like the shapes and the colors have to match. They have to have certain attributes. And believe it or not, that's the same thing we're doing when we're doing algebra and when we're doing geometry. We're putting together patterns like that. And so exercising those muscles, even though it looks just really simple, blue circles, like what could be that complicated? It's building those muscles in the brain that we're going to use later. It also builds a little bit of that like problem solving. So I thought it was super cool. And there's tons of board games out there that you can help students practice that logic part of their brain. And there's also games like Monopoly where you're actually using, you're calculating 10% and you're adding and subtracting based on, how much you have, and anything like that is really great. And then anytime that you get students in the kitchen, you're doing math with them, calling attention to that is great, because a lot of what we hear in the math classroom, particularly at the middle school level, is when are we ever going to use this? Because they're doing things that they don't see value in. So helping identify like, well, this is ratios, because instead of making a dozen muffins, we're going to make 2 dozen, or we're going to make half a dozen. And so helping kind of ground that in reality, that you really do use math every day. I had some remodeling done on a house I lived in a couple of years ago, and the foreman on the job, we were talking about what, I did for a living. And he said, oh, I was terrible at math in high school. I barely passed it. I was never good at it. And as he's telling me this, he's putting baseboards together. He's not even thinking about it. And he's cutting backwards and upside down 45-degree angles as if it's nothing. And I stopped him. I said, you're doing very complicated math right now just in your head. So I just have to disagree that you're bad at math, because it looks great. And so when we put those in the context, it's really, really good for all of us, because everybody likes to see a purpose to what they're being forced to do. And that's that. And I don't know which one of you I get to hand this back to, because you're both very active.
Thanks so much, Amy. That would be me. I'll talk with everyone now about the Action Team for Partnerships a little bit. Thanks for all the great guidance about reading and math and how we can support students at home. So I want to welcome everyone here to join our ATP. Our ATP is our Action Team for Partnerships. And we'll talk a little more about what this is all about. We have an upcoming opportunity in November for you to take part. We are a committee of educators, parents and family members, community members, and students who work together to promote student learning and achievement from a family engagement perspective. So our goal is to strengthen the relationship between home and school and empower families to be proactive in their students' education. So we plan ahead. We put together a plan every year, and then we do our best to follow through on that plan to make progress in this area, which improves our school and improves student achievement. Our mission statement reflects this as well, that we have a strong belief that family and community involvement, however you define family, the people who are your learning partners as a student and support you, result in increased achievement, engagement, and learning outcomes for students. So we dedicate time and energy and effort and commitments to cultivate those working partnerships. We typically have, in a typical year, we have 6 to 12 members. And we not only support our staff in growing in their techniques and helping every staff member engage families. And we also, last year, we did a week of service event where we helped students connect with their communities to do something good in the community. So that's one example of an activity that we have launched and that we support. And there's a lot of ideas floating around about other things that we can do in this year and the years ahead. There's also a very strong research base on this concept. So if that appeals to you, you're going to be interested to read more or learn more about Dr. Joyce Epstein's 6 types of family involvement and all the work that has gone into studying the ways that schools can best support family engagement. One thing that Dr. Epstein and her team found is that we can break up the idea of partnerships, family and community partnerships, into 6 different areas. One is parenting. We need to understand child development, and we can support others in understanding child development. And that's our type 1 is parenting supports. Then we have communicating, and that's just being really thorough about making sure, as Jamie presented much earlier in the presentation, all the ways we reach out to families, as well as all the ways that we provide for you to connect. And the ATP is another way that you can connect, and another way that you can volunteer, which is type 3. Volunteering in class, at home, and as audiences in a digital school, that looks a little different, but every time that you volunteer to come to one of these meetings and show your support for our efforts and learn more, that's also a form of volunteering. Type 4, learning at home, connections on homework, course choices, and the guidance we shared today about reading and math. We're always looking to learn ourselves, to learn more about ideas that work for families and students at home, and then we share it out. Type 5 is decision making, which is the inclusion of parents and families, as well as students and community members in school decisions. And type 6, collaborating with community. And you may know about the work that we do as a school for field trips and family engagement activities, where we connect with community partners and bring in speakers or have opportunities out in different parts of the state where we connect with the community. So November 13th at 6 o'clock is our next opportunity to take part in an ATP event, an ATP meeting. You can become involved, get to know other parents and families, get to know our staff. We have a core team of about 6 members right now who will be at that meeting and are excited to meet you of all different grade levels and different roles in the school. We'll work together to improve our partnership between staff, students, parents, and community. So, there's a spectrum of ways you can be involved. You can come and learn. You can just listen. You can take in. We'll have some information we'll share. You can come and give of your time. You can say, hey, I'd like to do this, and I want to share this idea. I'd like to do more. I'd like to become more involved, and this is one way to do that. You can come and connect. So maybe someone in your community who loves connecting with schools. Maybe they're a speaker, or maybe they host events or something like that for schools and school groups. So you can help us connect with others. So lots of ways to become involved in ATP. We would be delighted to have you join us, and you're always welcome to send a note. If you can't make the meeting, we can send you the recording. If the time doesn't work for you, we'll post the information in Brightspace, and typically it'll go out in the newsletter too. You can also send a note anytime to Jamie or I with the co-chairs this year. And there's also a form you can fill out, which is in the chat, if you'd like to just make sure that you're on our mailing list so we can contact you about our upcoming events.
Okay, thank you, John. Our next navigation station session will be held on September 24th at 10 a.m. And we are going to be talking about what are graduation seals, which will be hosted by our school counselors. And they will be discussing how to learn all about the pathways to graduation at Trecca and discover how to easily track your progress in the Evolve Parent Portal. So that is another important session that will be for students in grades 9 to 12 and their learning partners. I believe that is posted right now in Brightspace, and we will be sending out a reminder as well about that. We did put a survey in the chat box regarding our session today. We will open this up. If there's anyone that has any questions, you can go ahead and ask them now or put them in the chat box. And otherwise, if you do not have any questions, we appreciate you joining us, and you are free to go.